Hi there, this is Dave Cherry from the Coders Corner. In this video I'm going to discuss TC Menu Designer 2.1 and why we've moved back to a single code base in order to focus to the maximum extent on usability and sustainability of the project. We're even going to introduce a new command line mode that allows you to integrate TC Menu with most continuous integration systems, and also on top of that allows you to do most flows that you can do with the Designer UI, and you can even switch between the two. So let's address the single code base issue, which probably is the biggest question for many people. I mean, we a few years ago tried a new approach which we thought might lead to nicer UIs, but actually it turned out to be a lot more work than we expected. It wasn't as integrated into macOS and Linux as we first thought it was, and we realized that our best option was the original Designer UI, which works on nearly every platform and was just missing a few UX improvements which we've now added back. And on top of that, our biggest complaint on the forum by email and by every means was by far people not liking the store UIs. So we decided to completely move away from the store, make them available on GitHub, and people can then choose as and when they want to upgrade. And we think with the new improvements that we've made to the UX, you shouldn't miss much from the store versions. The Java is now very similar. Let me reiterate that OpenJDK is not proprietary. And on top of that, the applet viewer that caused the problems a few years ago is in no way associated with your browser. In fact, it is not even in the JDK any longer. And it isn't even a full JDK. It's been J-linked to the minimum possible number of classes so that we can package it. In this view, you can see a collage of some of the UX improvements that we've made. I think you'll see it looks a lot cleaner than the previous version. Let's now take a look at it in action. For this video, I've lowered the screen resolution slightly to make it easier to see on a wider range of devices. So let's start with a new CLI command first, which just lets you start TC Menu from the command line if you want to. We can see the splash screen has now been added to the Java Designer. We'll just dismiss that. But if you were new to the Designer, you could get the documentation and the video straight away. We can see here that the main screen has now been tidied up, and what we've done is gone to the Mac Designer as the basic thing to copy from. So we can see if you've used the Mac Designer, the settings are very, very similar. One advantage is because we're no longer running in the App Store, you can immediately work with it in most cases because it will try and auto-detect your Arduino directory for you. You can also see that the library version table has been brought across exactly the same way as usual. Let's switch to the beta stream and we'll see there instantly it picks up the new settings. If our plugins were out of date, we'd have just been able to update them straight from there. Just like the regular designers that you're used to, you can see these options here. The first time around, you may need to quit and start again in order to pick them up. It's a fairly small price to pay to keep things as simple as we can, basically. And we can see here that straight away it's picked up all the examples. We can open one and work with it immediately. And you can see that the editor is very simple and kept in line with how it was before. One change from the original Java version is we've now brought it in line with the Mac one again and the Windows Store one, that it has all the settings on the right hand side. So it's much tidier. You can see here that it's quite neatly and tidily laid out to the right. And we could go ahead and generate the code from here. Another minor improvement is the new project. You can now actually generate a new project on disk. It'll create you either a C++ or an INO file. It'll put an empty EMF file in there, and it will default to doing that in your whatever your project's directory is, which just gives you a few less things to worry about when you create a new project. But we'll do that a different way in the next step. So that's the major changes that have been brought in this release. So this part's a bit longer and covers the command line. If you're not interested in using the command line, you can probably skip this part. So what we've added is the ability to use TC menu directly from the command line to create projects, to edit the EMF file. It will put an item in there safely for you. It will take an item out safely. It allows you to verify and generate just like you could from the code menu. And it also allows you to start the UI and even start the UI in a project directory, and it will load up the EMF file that's in that directory automatically. So next we'll cover this in some detail. If you're not interested in the CLI, you can probably skip this part. To use the command line, we just type TC menu followed by the command that we want. If we don't know what command we want, we can just type --help, and it will actually give us the list of possible commands that we can use. So given that we don't have a directory to work in yet, let's create a new sketch. So let's do TC menu, create project. We give it the platform that we want to target, and let's say we want to do Arduino API, and we give it a name, so let's call it new proj. Yeah, if we look now, we've got a directory called new proj, so if we move into new proj, we'll see it's created an empty EMF and it's created an empty INO file for us. So let's just have a look at that here. I'll just have a look at the EMF file that it's generated. The first thing we do is switch this to JSON, because it is actually a JSON file, and there is actually a schema available for it as well. The schema is provided in the application directory where it's installed, and you can install that into Visual Studio Code or any other editor. At this point, let's create a new item, and here's one I prepared earlier because this is a little bit more complex command. Probably best just to copy it in from here, paste it in. There we go, let's try that. Right, so if we look, we can see that file's been edited. Let's make this a bit smaller, and we can see straight away the schema has kicked in and told us that we've got some problems here. So I'll just change that divisor to 1, set the max value to 255, leave the offset at 0, let's say it's in decibels. And there we go, we've just created our first item, and we've done it without any IDE. Let's say now we want to create a second item, so we can go back to our readme file. Let's say this one doesn't have an EEPROM location, and let's say it's a Boolean, and let's say it doesn't have a callback, so we just remove that. Let's say it's still on the root menu. Let's say this is system on system state. So now we can copy that back in, and let's even say that this is read only. So we just copy that back into there, copy that to the command line, paste it in, and let's have a look at the sketch again. And we can see we've got our new Boolean item system state. It's using true and false naming, and it's read only. If you don't know how to use the command and you want to just work out how you might use it for the first time, you can also do that. You can also just type the command, the sub-command with no options, and it will tell you what options are available and which are mandatory. Right, so at this point we could now verify our, just like we would in TC menu itself, we can just do verify -v, and that will tell us if all the EEPROM locations are good or not. And lastly, we could generate, I mean we won't do it at the moment because we've nothing to generate, but we can also do TC menu GUI. Just make sure the file's saved before you start. Oh, pardon me, let's type it correctly. And there you go, we've loaded it up into the designer. We could add another item here. Let's add a very large number. Yep, let's leave the settings at default. Let's move this one up in front of that one. And let's now save that and exit the designer. And we'll see straight away that our analog item, our large number item, and our Boolean item are in the right order. What we can do now is actually delete one. So let's delete an item. Let's say we accidentally put the analog item in. So that is ID 1. So to remove that, we just do delete item -ID 1. And if we look at this now, we'll see that ID 1 has gone, and now we've just got a large number and the other one. At the moment, the schema isn't 100%. We need to just make a few adjustments to it. So you can see occasionally you'll end up with a squiggle, but we'll get that sorted out over time. But it's a huge improvement on what went before. So that's the quick overview of command line. I hope it is useful for people, and thanks for watching.